times there could be cases when you cannot wait for the consent before processing the information. That's what GDPR calls as legitimate interest processing. And in these couple of videos, we are going to talk about the legitimate interest processing and tomorrow about the assessments. Welcome to my YouTube channel where you daily find new content on data privacy. So as I mentioned, you want to process some information for an urgent need or for some purpose, and you cannot wait for taking a consent. So GDPR allows you to do that with some precautions, some things taken into consideration. So what is the basic legitimate interest processing? Legitimate interest processing is when you are processing personal information of a user without his consent, but for a legitimate reason. The legitimate reason has to have a legal reason behind it or a relevant reason behind it. You should be able to justify that you are not intruding into the privacy of the individual, you are not leaking his personal information or misusing his personal information. You are still taking care of his basic fundamental right to privacy and processing his information without his consent. You need to do a careful consideration between the legitimate reason or what you call as legitimate reason for processing and ensuring that the individual's privacy is taken care of. What are those scenarios where it could come up like this? It could be, for example, fraud prevention. You suspect that there is some financial fraud possible and you process financial information which is even otherwise called sensitive personal information for a user. However, if that helps an attempt to prevent a fraud, then it's a legitimate reason. You can do that. You don't need to wait for a consent. Similarly, when you are monitoring security on your network, it would help avoid any breach. It would help avoid unauthorized people accessing data inside your network. So in that case also, if you have processed some personal information and helped overall taken care of the security of the rest of the information or personal or professional, whichever kind of information, but taken care that no one is intruding in the network, no one is trying to hack your network or the data that you have behind the network, then again legitimate, it is also considered as a legitimate way of processing, and you can override that the consent is there or not. Then when it comes to marketing, now generally marketing needs consent because it's the user's choice whether he wants to receive too many of communications from your site with respect to your products. However, in case you are doing direct marketing, very limited to and occasional marketing for the kind of products or services that you know that the particular user is interested in, right? Then you can treat it as a legitimate processing. However, if it goes beyond control, that you are just because you have not been questioned, you are just sending random emails, product details, etc., for which the user is not even willing to take, then that goes beyond the scope of legitimate processing, and then you need to have a consent from that user that you would like to share your product details, and also then it goes under the normal consent management process. If your employee is under a performance question, if your employee is under a behavioral question, then you don't need his consent to monitor his behavior, right? He won't give you the consent or he will get alert. So if you are required to monitor someone for a real concern, these could be legal issues, these could be disciplinary issues, this could be any issue within the working premises or around the working premises. Your employee might be suspected of leaking personal information or any other kind of information of the organization. Then again, you can do a surveillance of him without consent, which is fair. So that is also considered as a legitimate interest processing. And another example is sharing of information of your employees. You are sharing information of your employees within the corporate group, and it has a reasonable purpose, right? It may not have been included in the induction HR or privacy laws and other things, but it has a reasonable purpose as to why do you need to share personal information of one of your employees within the corporate group, right? Be careful, you are not sharing it outside to the outside world for some new thing, good or bad, right? Within the corporate group, then again that's also legitimate. So these are a few examples which show that if the purpose is legitimate, you can use the personal information, process it without waiting for a consent to come in, maybe without even asking for a consent. There are certain other aspects which are very important here. First is that you have to make sure that the purpose is legitimate. It should not be that you do process anyone's information and later on say, I thought it is legitimate. You have to prove that it is legitimate. You have to create a clear balance between the legitimate interest and the privacy of the user, of the data subject whose information you are processing. So you need to be very careful about that as well. There has to be an absolute transparency with the user. User should know that you might be ending up doing some legitimate processing with his information. But even if it is an information provided after it, then also it is fair, but you need to issue a privacy notice. A notice that explains the legitimate interest for which the user's information has been processed, the type of information that has been processed, and does it really impact the individual? If yes, how? If these kind of information are there in your privacy notice, legitimate interest processing can be done. That's the basic about what is legitimate interest. I hope you like my content. Please press the like and the bell icon. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done that, and share your feedback in the comment section. In the next video, we are going to talk about the legitimate interest assessment as defined by GDPR. Thank you.